I have two books here. One is a fantasy book filled with all kinds of fictional characters and places, and the other is The Lord of the Rings. It may seem strange to pair these books together, but they do have one interesting connection. Both the Book of Mormon and The Lord of the Rings have sold 150 million copies. This makes them tied for the 6th place of the best-selling books of all time. In case you're interested, the only books to have sold more copies than these two are, at number 1, obviously, the Bible, at 5 billion copies sold. Guinness Book of World Records says it's the best-selling book of all times. At number 2, Chairman Mao's The Little Red Book at around 900 million that he published during his tyranny. I don't think anybody's bought a copy since 1976 when he died. Death to all tyrants. The Quran at number 3 at 800 million. Don Quixote at number 4 at 500 million. And A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens at 200 million. Then the Book of Mormon and The Lord of the Rings tied for 6th place at 150 million. Only 20 books in all of history have sold over 100 million copies, by the way. I'd like to note some important differences between these two books. First, the Book of Mormon was published in 1830, and Lord of the Rings was published around 1954 to 1955. Therefore, the Book of Mormon had 125 years head start to the Lord of the Rings, and an entire religion behind it, and they are still tied in sold copies. Second, as Bill Maher said on his show Real Time on HBO, quote, "The Mormons for 100 years have gone all over the world with one goal, to spread their faith to people who don't want it." Likewise, the Book of Mormon has been primarily distributed around the world to people who didn't ask for it and will never read it. But every copy of The Lord of the Rings was bought by people who actually wanted to read it, and they read it again and again and again. Third, the Book of Mormon is claimed to be inspired by a man-god from a made-up planet called Kolob. Tolkien did not claim inspiration for Lord of the Rings, and yet The Lord of the Rings is far better written, more entertaining, a far more beloved book across humanity than the Book of Mormon. For instance, you rarely, if ever, see the Book of Mormon on any of the top 100 books lists. Trust me, I've looked at all of them. Every now and then you'll find a Mormon say they love the book, but you will not find non-Mormons telling people to read it or gifting it to friends. On the other hand, it's difficult to find a top book list without The Lord of the Rings on it. In fact, the BBC in 2003 asked almost 1 million readers their favorite book of all time. And what was number 1? The Book of Mormon. No, that would be absurd. Obviously not the Book of Mormon. No, it was The Lord of the Rings. The LDS Church will keep printing and buying copies of the Book of Mormon and hand them out to unsuspecting, ignorant victims, and it will therefore sell many more millions in the years to come. But people of their own volition will continue to purchase The Lord of the Rings. And with this new Amazon series, even though it's a hot mess of scuba in my opinion, I'm willing to bet sales for Lord of the Rings will soon surpass Joseph Smith's greatest con. The most important lesson here, other than the obvious fact that you should read Lord of the Rings and then watch all 3 extended editions on HBO Max, is replace all Book of Mormons in hotels with The Lord of the Rings, and do it immediately. Mark Twain gave the most succinct review ever written on the Book of Mormon, and he wrote this around 40 years after its publication. Quote, "All men have heard of the Mormon Bible, but few except the elect have seen it, or at least taken the trouble to read it. I brought away a copy from Salt Lake. The book is a curiosity to me. It is such a pretentious affair, and yet so slow, so sleepy, such an insipid mess of inspiration. It is chloroform in print. If Joseph Smith composed this book, the act was a miracle. Keeping awake while he did it was, at any rate. If he, according to tradition, merely translated it from certain ancient and mysteriously engraved plates of copper, which he declares he found under a stone in an out-of-the-way locality, the work of translating was equally a miracle, for the same reason."